What's up everyone? This video is going to be on proper care for your electric scooter battery pack or e-bike battery pack. These are LIPO battery packs in these scooters, and they need certain care if you want to prolong the life of your battery pack so you don't have to buy a new battery. And they are quite expensive, so you want to take as good a care of it as you possibly can. I have two scooters here. These are Kiwa scooters. This one's a Q1 Hummer. This is a Q Power. This one's got dual motors and a 60-volt battery. This one comes stock. It's a single motor, rear motor, with a 48-volt battery. I've upgraded this one, so I've got a 52-volt battery pack in it, nominal. One advantage about LiPo battery packs over the old lead-acid batteries, you don't have to fully drain the battery before you recharge. There's no detrimental effects to not doing that. So you could ride this scooter or your e-bike or whatever with a LiPo battery pack and maybe only use 20%, 30% of your battery every time you ride, and you could fully recharge, right after that, and you're not going to hurt the battery or cause it to lose any life whatsoever. I rarely, if ever, drain my batteries fully down. I'd have to be on a very long ride to even get near that point. And for LiPo packs, it's actually better to stay away from the low end of the charge for reasons that you could cause damage if you go too low. So there are some things you can do and you should do if you want to prolong the life of your battery pack. And if you take care of your battery, these things should last, depending on the manufacturer and type of cells they use, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 recharges, full recharges. So basically what that means is if you were to have it fully charged and let it drain down to the minimum amount, and then charge it fully again, that's one recharge. If you're going to let the battery drain 50% and then recharge it fully, that's only half a recharge. So you can see, 500 full recharges would be 1,000 half recharges. So if you only let the battery drain halfway each time, you should get around 1,000 or more recharges for that battery life if you take care of it properly. There are some things you need to do to take proper care of your battery pack so it will last as long as possible for you, and you don't find yourself needing to buy a new battery pack, which, depending on the voltage and the capacity, is going to run you anywhere from $500 up to $800, $900. I made some notes here. If you look at number one here, you should never leave your battery pack fully charged for more than a few days. So basically what that means is if you are planning on taking a ride and you fully charge your scooter or your e-bike, and then something comes up and you don't end up riding it, you should run some of that voltage off if it's going to be sitting there at full charge more than a few days. Now this would be for absolute ultimate protection of your battery. If you leave it sit for more than 3 days, it's not just going to kill the battery, but for ideal care of your battery, if it's sitting there more than 3 days at a full charge, jump on it and ride a little bit to bring that battery voltage down. Okay, number two there, don't leave the pack fully drained either. So, and I'm going to get to the voltages here in a minute and what's fully drained, what's fully charged and such. But you should not have it fully drained when it's just sitting, and you should not have it fully charged when it's just sitting. Should be anywhere in between. Okay, next, if you've just ridden your scooter and you want to recharge it, let it sit at least an hour to cool down the pack before recharging. It's not good to recharge these LiPo cells when they're hot. They won't be terribly hot, but it's a good idea to let things cool down before recharging again. Now, if you were on a ride, a long ride, and you took a charger with you and you stopped, somewhere to get a bite to eat, and you need to recharge before you continued, it's not going to be a problem. But wait 10 minutes and 15 minutes before you throw the charger back on. But just as a general rule of thumb, let the battery pack cool down before you recharge it. Okay, and number four here, and this is the most important one, was for storing the battery pack or scooter or e-bike or whatever you got for long periods of time. So I got four there. It's storing for long periods of time, and by long periods of time I mean like months, 3, 4 months. You don't ride it during the winter time, so you got 5 or 6 months, 4, 5, 6 months where you're not going to be riding. You need to take care of that battery. You can't just let it sit there if you want to get the longest life out of it. And I've had people contact me who have done things detrimental to the battery by leaving it stored for a year or more and not having it properly cared for before they store it. So basically, if you're going to store it for long periods of time, you want to get the battery voltage to about 65% of what its full capacity is. You don't want to leave it fully charged, you don't want to leave it fully drained. 65% is the sweet spot for storing it. So if your battery voltage is higher, you need to run it down to about 65%. If it's lower, you need to charge it up to about 65%. And then disconnect the battery from the controller. Now, on a lot of these scooters, such as the Q1 here and the Q Power, there's an alarm module where you can hit your remote to alarm, disarm the alarm, kill power to the scooter and such. Those alarm modules are always connected to your battery, whether you have your scooter turned on or not. There's power going to the alarm module, so it's ready to beep when you hit your button. So it doesn't draw a lot of power, but it does draw, like for example, on the Q1, I did some testing and found it drained about 0.4 volts, almost a half a volt a day off the battery with the scooter just sitting there. So in a case like that, if you've got the controller hooked up to the battery, that alarm module is pulling power from your battery. If you then let that scooter sit there for 6-7 months, a year, it's going to be pulling voltage off that battery the whole time, and there's a good chance your battery is going to get drained below the safe point where it might be dead the next time you pull it out a year later and try to use it. So that's why you need to physically disconnect the battery from the controller, so the battery is just sitting there, not plugged onto anything. You need to take your deck off, or wherever your battery is, if it's an e-bike or whatever. On the Q1 here, there's 12 screws, 4 on each side, 2 on the back, 2 on the front. You need to remove those. You need to remove your deck. Locate your battery connection, which on this one is right here. It's an XT60, the yellow connector. Physically unplug that, and then your battery is no longer connected to electronics, so it will not be connected to the alarm module and will not drain any power. So again, if you're storing your battery a long period of time, you want to disconnect the battery from whatever you have it connected to. So disconnect your battery after you have charged it or discharged it to about 65% capacity, and then at that point, it should be good to just sit there, be stored without use for 4 to 5 months, maybe 6 months. Somewhere in that time frame, 4 to 5 months, if it's still not being used, you need to fully charge the battery again, and then again run it back down to 65% charge. And you need to do that every 4 to 5 months, 6 months max. So if you got that thing sitting there a year and you're not using it, at least twice a year, you need to charge the battery fully back up and then run it back down to 65%, and then it can sit there another 4 to 6 months. So here's the entire list. There's 4 steps there I've mentioned. If you want to pause, take a picture of this so you have it for easy access when you need it. Okay, next I've listed the battery voltages for 3 different batteries. They're fully charged voltage, or absolute minimum voltage that you should never go below, and what you would store it at. Starting off on top, a 60 volt nominal battery, which is what's in my Q Power there. It's actually 59.2 volts nominal. They rounded up to 60, but it's in reality 59.2 volts. Fully charged is 67.2 volts. The absolute lowest you should ever take it is 51.2 volts, and I don't even go anywhere near that because you're near the lower edge, and if you go much lower than that, you can damage the battery. I get 25, maybe 30 miles out of it riding pretty fast, so I really don't take it down that low anyway because I'm never going that far with it. And then your 65% storage voltage would be 61.6 volts. So if you have a 60 volt battery, nominal battery, you want to store it at 61.6 volts, charge it to that point, discharge it to that point, unplug the battery from the scooter or the e-bike, and you can let it sit there for 4 to 5, maybe 6 months. Next one is a 48 volt nominal battery, which is in the Q1 stock. It's actually 48.1 volts. Again, they round it to 48 volts. Fully charged, that battery is 54.6 volts. The lowest, the absolute minimum you should ever go is 41.6 volts. Again, I would not go near that. I wouldn't go any lower than like 43 or so, just to play it safe. And the 65% storage charge on that would be 50 volts. So if you have a 48 volt battery and you're going to store it for months, disconnect it from whatever's connected to after you have drained it or charged it to about 50 volts. Lastly, 52 volt nominal battery, which is 51.8 volts rounded up. And that's what I have in my Q1s. I replaced the 48 volt batteries with 52 volt batteries. full charge on that is 58.8 volts. The absolute minimum is 44.8, and the storage charge would be 53.9 volts or thereabouts. Now, for the storage charge, if you don't get it exact, that's fine, but you shouldn't be somewhere near these ranges. So again, 60 volt battery stored at 61.6 volts or thereabouts, 48 volt battery, 50 volts or thereabouts, and a 52 volt battery, 53.9 volts, 54 volts, somewhere around that range. So again, here's that chart showing your 60 volt battery, 48 volt battery, 52 volt battery, and what your storage voltage should be. Get the battery to that voltage, disconnect the battery, and then it can sit for 4, 5, or 6 months before you have to recharge it, drain it back down to 65%, and then it can sit another 4, 5, 6 months. I've had some people contact me who their batteries went out and they didn't know why, and it was basically because they weren't well taken care of. Like the scooter sat for a year or more, and by that time the battery has drained down possibly below the minimum of what it should drain down to, and if you get anywhere below those minimums, you're risking damaging the battery where it will not be able to be recovered. All right, guys, hope that helps you guys out. Have a good one. Take care. Peace. Ride safe.